In this video, I will briefly explain the problems on the in-class worksheet I gave you, in case you want to review how to do the problems. Problem number 1 is 2x plus 6y is equal to 12. If I wanted to go through and solve that, the first thing I would do is I would let x equal 0. As soon as I let x equal 0, that 2x is out of the equation. So I have 6y is equal to 12, which means y is equal to 2. Then I would let y equal 0. If I let y equal 0, the 6y is out of the equation. I have 2x is equal to 12, so x is equal to 6. Then if I want to go through and graph that, I'm going to put a dot at 0, 2. I'm going to put another dot at 6, 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to draw a straight line in between those 2 points. When I draw my line in between those 2 points, you can see that now I have that. But I've mentioned to you that you need to give me a third point. So I'm trying to figure out, well, what would a third point be? And I'm going to use the idea of slope in order to figure that out. I know to get from, say, this point to this point, I'm going to go up 2 and over 6. So I'm going to do the same thing. From this point here, I'm going to go up 2 and over 6 again. And it does look like it goes right through that particular point. That particular point is the point -6. X is -6. Y is 4. And then I want to make sure that that does work in my equation. So if I put -6 in for x, that means I have 2 times -6 plus 6 times y is equal to 4. And I have to solve that and make sure it's equal to 12. 2 times -6 gives me -12. 6 times 4 gives me 24. And -12 plus 24 does equal 12. So that is a correct equation. Remember, one other thing is to put arrows on the end of each. Not 100% important, but it is good to do that. Problem number 2 is y equals -3/4 x subtract 1. This equation is written in slope-intercept form, so I'm going to do this one a little bit different. As I take a look at this, I know that my y-intercept is the -1. So I'm going to put a dot right here at -1. The slope is the number before the x, and the slope is a -3/4. So from the point -1, I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go over 4 to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, which means my dot is going to go right here. Then, once again, I'm going to go through and I'm going to draw my line in between those 2 points. When I draw my line in between those 2 points, I do want to make sure that I am going through a particular point that's going to, so that the slope is going to work. And sometimes, as I say, if you just move the ruler just a little bit, it kind of changes things. So I'm trying to adjust that ruler so it is going to go through the point that I know it needs to go through as far as the slope goes. And then I'm going to go through, I'm going to draw my line. When I draw my line now looks like that. I'm going to put arrows at either end. And I have 2 points right now. I have the point 0, -1 right here. I have the point 4, -4 right here because I went down 3 and over 4. And now I need to give another point. So if the slope is a -3/4, I can also go up 3. Up 3 is a +3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go over 4 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because going over to the left would be a -4. a positive 3 divided by negative 4 still gives me a slope of a negative 3/4. The other thing that I want to do is I want to make sure, it looks like this point is the point negative 4, positive 2. I want to make sure that that point does work inside that particular equation. So I'm going to put negative 4 in for x and 2 in for y and see if it works. So my equation, 2 equals negative 3 times 4. I'm sorry, it's a negative 4 minus 1. Negative 3/4 times negative 4, I'm just going to end up getting, it's a negative times a negative, so I'm going to get a positive. I'm going to get a positive 3 because these are going to cancel out, and it's going to be a positive 3 minus 1, and 3 minus 1 does equal 2, so it does work. So if I want to label my points, I already labeled that particular point. This point is the point 0, negative 1, and this point is the point 4, negative 4. Question number 3 says, graph the line x equals negative 4. In order to go through and graph this, I could set up a table of values if I wanted to. X always has to equal negative 4. It doesn't matter what y is, so I'm just going to put in the point 0 for y. I'm going to give another negative 4 for x, and I'll use 1 for y. And then I can use a negative 4, and I can use a negative 1 for y. Now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to plot these 3 points. Negative 4, 0 would be right here. Negative 4, 1 would be right here. Negative 4, negative 1 would be right here. So you can see that as far as drawing my line is going to be a vertical line going through. See if I can get my ruler a little bit more exact there. It would be a line, vertical line, going straight through. It looks like I missed that a little bit, but you certainly get the idea. And I'm going to put my points at either end, my arrows I should say at either end, and those are 3 points for that. It says to label at least 3 points on the line. One other thing that I will mention to you is remember that the slope of this is undefined. The slope of all vertical lines is undefined. Question number 4 says to graph a line that has a y-intercept negative 2 that has a slope of 2/3, and then to give the equation of that line. So I know that has a y-intercept of negative 2, so I'm going to put a dot at the y-intercept of negative 2. If it has a slope of 2/3, I need to go up 2 and over 3 to the right in order to put my other dot. So I now have those 2 points, the point at 0, negative 2, and the point at 3, 0. I'm going to draw my line in between those two. Put my arrows on the ends. And that is what that line looks like when I graph it. In order to give the equation of the line, to give an equation of a line, you need 2 things. You need the slope and you need the y-intercept, and we have both of those. So the equation is just going to be y equals 2/3 x subtract 2. Question number 5 says, graph a line that has a slope of negative 5/2 and goes through the point 1, 2, and to give the equation of the line. I realized last night after we were working that I made a typo here. It should not be going through the point 1, 2. Instead, I want it to go through the point 2, 1. So if you will change that on there, it's going through the point 2, 1 instead of the point 1, 2. In order to graph this now, I am going to put a dot at the point 2, 1, which would be right here. It says the slope is a negative 5/2. So from that point, I'm going to go down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to go over 2, and this would be another point. The problem is right now it's not going through the y-axis, so I need to find a third point. So in this case, I'm going to go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go over 2, and I'm going to put another point right here. Now I can go through and I can draw my line for those 3 different points. Let me see if I can get my ruler here lined up a little bit better. That looks fairly good. And I'm going to draw my line and put my arrows in. So I graphed the line. Now I need to give the equation of the line. Once again, to give the equation of a line, you need 2 different things. I need the slope, and I also need the y-intercept. The slope of this is negative 5/2. It's given in the problem, so it's y equals negative 5/2 x. And now I need to know, what is the y-intercept? Well, it crosses at positive 6. So the equation of that line is y equals negative 5/2 x plus 6. Question number 6 is, determine the equation of a line that has y-intercept negative 3 and is perpendicular to the line whose equation is 3x minus 4y equals 5. Write your equation in slope-intercept form. If I'm going to go through and do that, what I'm going to do first, I know slope-intercept form equals y equals mx plus b. And it wants me to determine the equation of a line that has a y-intercept of negative 3. So I know that my b is going to be equal to negative 3. The question is, what is my slope? Well, my line needs to be perpendicular to the line whose equation is this. And right now, that equation, 3x minus 4y, is written in standard form. So I'm going to rewrite that 3x minus 4y is equal to 5, and then I'm going to go through some algebra to change that from standard form into slope-intercept form. In order to change it into slope-intercept form, I have to get y all by itself. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. When I do that, I get negative 4y is equal to negative 3x plus 5. I need to just solve it for y. So I'm going to have to divide both sides by negative 4, which means I'm going to divide everything by a negative 4. When I do that, the negative 4 and the negative 4 cancel out. I'm left with y equals, and remember this is a negative divided by negative, which means it's a positive. So it's 3/4 x minus 5/4. So I want my line, it says determine the equation of a line that's perpendicular to this line. So this particular line has a slope of 3/4. Lines that are perpendicular have opposite reciprocal slopes. So that must mean that my line has a slope, the opposite reciprocal of 3/4, which would be a negative 4/3. Well, now I know what the slope is. I know what the y-intercept is. So my equation would be y equals negative 4/3 x subtract 3. And that would be the answer to that problem. Question number 7 says to write the equation of the line that's pictured. Remember, you need 2 things in order to give me the equation of a line. You need the slope of the line, and you also need the y-intercept of that line. So I'm taking a look at this line, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the slope. In order to figure out the slope, I need to go from one point to another. So if I start at this particular point, I can go down 2, 1, 2, and over 2. So the slope of this is a negative 2 over a positive 2, which is equal to a negative 1. So the slope of this line is a negative 1. I also need to know what's the y-intercept. Where does it cross the y-axis? It crosses the y-axis here at a positive 2. So my y-intercept is a positive 2. If I want to write the equation of the line, I'm going to write it in the form y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to have y is equal to, the slope is a negative 1, so I have a y equals negative 1x. The y-intercept is 2, so the equation of the line is y equals negative 1x plus 2. In an answer book and a math book, they probably would not have that negative 1 there. Instead, they would just say y is equal to a negative x plus 2 because there's an understood 1 in front of the x. You could have either answer, and I would certainly give you full credit. As far as problem number 8 goes, that is a problem that we are going to skip. You'll notice as you take a look at the graph for problem number 8 that the y-intercept is not easily discernible because it does not go through an exact point. It goes somewhere between 2 and 3, but we do not know exactly where it goes through. There is an algebraic way to go through and figure out where it goes through, but we're not going to talk about it in this particular course. So we will just skip problem number 8. Question number 9 says to give the equation of this line. You can see that the graph that I'm using doesn't go up to 7 on both the x and the y, or the negative 7 on the x, I should say. So I kind of drew those in there, but once again, we're going to go through the same process that we went through for number 7. I want it in the form y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to figure out what's my slope and what's my y-intercept. As I take a look at this, this has a slope. Slope means the change in y over the change in x. So in order to get from this point right here to the other point, I have to go up 7. So plus 7, and then I have to go to the right. Whoop, I didn't go up high enough. Up 7 and over to the right 7. So the slope of this is 7 over 7, which is equal to 1. So this has a slope of 1. My y-intercept, where does it cross the y-axis? It crosses the y-axis at 7. So the equation of this line is y equals 1x plus 7. Once again, you would not see the number 1 in front of the x probably in an answer key in a book. Instead, they would just say the answer is y equals x plus 7. The last problem is problem number 10, and once again you're asked to write the equation of the line. So I need to put it in the y equals mx plus b format. I need to know what the slope is. I need to know what the y-intercept is. The slope of this line I'm going to get from going by one point to another. So if I start here, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. So it's a positive 3. I'm going to go to the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a negative 6. So this has a slope of a negative, because a positive divided by a negative is equal to a negative. It's actually a negative 3/6. A better way of writing this, though, would be to take this fraction, 3/6, and put it into lower terms, simpler terms. So the slope, a better way of writing this slope would be a negative 1/2. And notice that it also works if it is a slope of negative 1/2 as far as going through the points. If I go to this point and I go up 1 and over 2, I end up right there. If I go up 1 and over 2 again, I end up right here. If I go up 1 over 2 again, I end up right there. So the slope for this is a negative 1/2. The y-intercept is the other idea that I need here. It crosses the y-axis at a negative 5. So the equation of this line is y equals negative 1/2 x subtract 5. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Please let me know if there's anything I can do as you work through the homework.